Yes po.
Morning and welcome, fellow pledgers and members of what might be considered an endangered species, the uncorrupt journalist. Did you know that in the United States, the CDC did a study that showed that members of the media
Mayo, hindi
rank
kita ko. Mayo.
in the top 10, sevens to be exact, in a list of suicide rates by profession? But that's in the US. Over here in the Philippines, we're different. Kasi we are more likely to be murdered than to commit suicide. So you might say, ikaw naman, Winnie, why focus on death? Well, because literally, figuratively, we are in a life or death situation right now. The Philippines is down on its knees, physically, economically, and morally. And what we in media do, particularly in the next several months leading to the elections, may either help expedite the process or reverse it. So it is a high stakes game. We all know it. And we have made an unprecedented move with Pledge 2022, joining hands with exactly 311 other signatories and 40 news organizations from all around the country, spanning generations, showing our solidarity in helping Filipino citizens to make knowledge-based decisions about the leaders they choose, from the top national to the mighty barangay. This election is not going to be the same, same as previous elections, because we will live up to our pledge. We will investigate rather than blindly accept information fed to us. We will be impartial. We will at all times behave with integrity, and we will tell it like it is. But you might say,
no history of exposure.
Exactly. But politicians have done the same thing. Every elections, they sign pledges.
Pwede na mai-clarify natin to. Pagka sinabi, may allergy ba kayo? Kasi huwag ganito.
Every elections, they sign pledges to behave with honor, with no cheating, etc., and etc. And right after the photo op, they go their own merry ways. What will make us different? Well, in the first place, we are not competing with each other. In the second place, that is what this launch is all about. Finding ways and means where we have each other's backs, where we can consult with each other, where we can find safe haven, compare notes, seek and give advice, etc., etc. I hope. United we stand and all that. So let us start these proceedings by listening to Gary Granada in his song Lupang Malaya. And I hope we can sing along with him.
Wala ng pandama.
Ayaw kong isipin na wala nang ang pag-asa ang mundong ito.
Sa kabila ng lahat,
ako'y naniniwala pa rin na balang araw dadaigin
ng liwanag ang minsan pa natin langapin ang hangin sariwa na mga kamay ay magkahawa, magkakapit-bisig magkayakap na mga paa ay nakaapat sa lupang malaya.
Katuwid
isang biyaya sa likas na yaman ginugol sa mga sakahang nauukol sa mga halamang sumisibol sa lupang malaya. At kung ako'y lalaban di sa kaya ko,
Ang ipaglalaban pa rin sa'yo.
bakit nga ba tayo nagkaganito? Ngunit kahit tayo nagkaganito, sa kabila ng lahat,
Lahat-lahat ako'y naniniwala pa rin na balang araw
dadaigin ni Kalinga si Sakim at tuluyan nating kukupin ang bayang payapa at sambayan ay maghalakhakan at ako't ika'y maghahalikan at mag-aawit at magindakan sa lupang malaya. At ang umiibig magtatalik sa mga panata at tahimik na mga tahanang nakatinig sa lupang malaya.
Winnie, you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Now, I'd like to introduce to you a couple of giants of the journalism scene in the Philippines who are going to read to us once more for our delectation the election pledge that we signed. First, we have Melinda Quintos de Jesus, who is a warrior journalist. She has been in the journalism field since the 80s, and she was a fighter against the Marcos regime. She then founded the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility, which has been monitoring and reviewing and giving all sorts of training for journalists in media freedom and responsibility. And as a matter of fact, to show you what she thought, or what the Center of Media Freedom and Responsibility thought of our elections in 2019 and 2016. And in 2016, she said something, I mean, the staff said something like that reporters did nothing but actually just report what candidates said about each other. And in 2019, the title of the review was Nothing New, Hardly Relevant Coverage. We are not going to have that happen next year, because we are going to do our thing. So first, let's hear from me. Wait, I have to introduce the second reader of the election pledge, Ed Lingao, who, my goodness, has covered war, conflict situations. He spent over 2 decades of his professional career as a writer, correspondent, reporter, producer, news manager for print, broadcast, and news media. Ano pa ang gusto nyo? And he has won awards, the Marshall McLuhan Fellowship Award, etc. These are two of our media giants. So will you please come and read the election pledge?
Every election is a reckoning for democracy. As journalists reporting on another critical moment for our country, we have a duty to provide accurate, reliable, and essential information that will empower voters and encourage public discussion and debate. Affirming that election integrity is not just about credible counting of votes, but about clean, level, legal, transparent, and accountable campaigning. That credible elections need credible media. Conversely, corrupted media can further corrupt politics. That citizens need issues and debates to be clarified, not simply amplified. We pledge to put voters and the integrity of the electoral process at the center of our reporting. Focus on issues, not just on personalities. Examine the track record and qualifications of candidates and political parties vying for public office and hold them accountable for the veracity and honesty of their every statement and promise. Cover as responsible and accountable the institutions mandated to ensure an even, orderly, and credible electoral playing field. Stand in solidarity with each other when any journalist or news organization is harassed by state agents, political parties, candidates, or private groups for their evidence-based journalism. Be accountable to the public. We will hold each other to higher standards of impartiality, credibility, and integrity.
In line with these principles, we commit to challenge and correct statements and claims that have no basis in fact. Avoid highlighting or amplifying falsehoods, hate speech, and incitements to violence. Report on the partisan activities of government officials, including those working for national and local agencies, the courts, law enforcement, and the armed services. Monitor the independence of the Commission on Elections, the courts, the military, the police, teachers, and all other individuals and entities involved in the conduct of the election. Highlight the efforts of the public and private sectors to uphold the honesty and integrity of the elections. Monitor vote buying, campaign spending, and the use of public funds to win elections. Contextualize reporting on surveys and the winnability. We will not report on space without verifying the source of polling data, the track record of companies conducting the polls, the methodologies used, and the questions asked. Focus on voter education, citizen participation, and empowerment. Organize and report on town halls and debates and encourage candidates and citizens to take part in them. Uphold codes of ethics and professional conduct and disclose potential conflicts of interest. Make a clear distinction between reportage and opinion. Promote safety, public health, and security protocols for and among journalists. And be mindful of the impact of our work on the safety and well-being of the people and the communities we interact with in the course of our reporting. Share best practices, knowledge, and experience, and raise our individual and collective capacities and competencies in covering elections, as well as the politics, issues, policies, leaders, and the people beyond the elections. Ito, Winnie.
You're on mute, Winnie.
Oh, God. Sorry, that's a tall order, Ed and Melinda, but we're sure going to do it. And to help us do it, we're going to, it's going to be explained by Sheila Coronel exactly how this pledge came about. You, you know, it seems stupid introducing Sheila, but I will do it. I will do it anyway. Sheila is now a professor of the Columbia Journalism School in New York. That was founded, by the way, by Joseph Pulitzer. But the more important thing is that she was a co-founder of the Philippine Institute, a Center for Investigative Journalism. She is a Magsaysay awardee, and until recently, she was Dean of Academic Affairs of the Columbia Journalism School. She's been out of the Philippines for over 5 years, but you can take a Filipino out of the Philippines, but you cannot take the Philippines out of a Filipino. So please, Sheila, tell us how this pledge came about.
Thank you, Winnie. Before we start, I'd like to ask us to have a minute of silence in memory of Nonoy Espina, one of our colleagues who recently passed away. Nonoy was a stalwart defender of press freedom in the Philippines. He will be missed. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Magandang gabi dito. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagdala dito ngayon. Natutuwa kami na napakaraming pumirma doon sa election pledge na binasa ni Ed at ni Melinda kanina. Gusto ko lang ikwento kung paano ito nagsimula. Ang immediate inspiration nito ay ang pledge na nilagdaan ng iba't ibang periodista sa Amerika tungkol sa coverage ng gun violence. Alam naman ninyo siguro na napakaraming namamatay dito dahil sa talamak ang mga baril. At maraming okasyon na isang gunman kadalasan may emotional or mental problems, bigla na lang mamamaril sa supermarket, sa kalye, sa opisina o pabrika kung saan siya nagtatrabaho. Kaya ito ang sinabi ng pledge na nilagdaan lang nitong Mayo, na ang gun violence ay public health crisis. Di lang ito krimen or police story. Sabi ng mga lumagda, we pledge to learn the lessons of the pandemic. Sa pandemang ito kasi, maraming media dito ang nag-cover ng structural problems gaya ng kakulangan ng healthcare at bakuna sa Black and Brown communities. Ika nila, we will apply the lessons of the pandemic to gun coverage, focusing less on high-profile drama and more on the underlying causes of this uniquely American tragedy. Doon sa mga interesadong malaman pa tungkol sa pledge na ito, ilalagay ko ito sa chat para mabasa ninyo kung gusto ninyo. Ayan. Shinare ko itong pledge na ito sa mga ilang kaibigan sa Manila at tinanong ko sa kanila kung pwede natin gayahin ito para sa coverage ng eleksyon sa Pilipinas. Kung sabi nila, sige. So nagtawag kami ng ilang Zoom meeting. Ang huli naming pagkikita, mas marami na kami sa huli namin pagkikita. Siguro mga 30 or 40. Group editing, line by line. Ang ganda ng discussion namin. At ang sarap maging bahagi muli sa isang group activity kasama ang mga kakosa na naniniwala at naninindigan para sa malaya at makabuluhang pamamahayag. Iba't iba tayo sa pananaw sa mundo, pero pwede tayong magkaisa. Niisip ko noong 1980s, pagkapatay ni Nonoy Aquino at napakatindi ng pagkontrol sa media. Pero nagkaisa ang maraming periodista noon sa pagtaguyod ng demokrasya. Napaka-isolated natin ngayon dahil sa COVID-19. Pero pwede siguro nating ituloy ang diskusyon na ito at patuloy pa nating palakasin ang ating pagkakaisa. Sana sama-sama nating i-encourage ang iba pa nating mga kabaro maging sa campus press, sa probinsya, sa radyo, sa TV, sa web na pumirma sa pledge. May isang advertising agency na nag-volunteer na gumawa ng mga badges at banners. Libre ito, maraming salamat sa kanila. Ang slogan na pre-post nila ay, "Huwag Kukurap." Ibig sabihin, bukas dapat lagi ang ating mga mata at labanan natin ang mga corrupt. Sabi nga sa Our Father, lead us not into temptation. Kung pwede sana, gamitin natin itong badges na ito sa Facebook at sa iba pang social media. Ilalagay namin ang mga badges at banners na ito sa chat. Siya rin pakilagay sa chat. May ginawa rin kaming Wag Kukurap Facebook group. Sana sumama kayo dito para matuloy natin ang pag-uusap na ito. Kung may mga suggestion o plano kayo, pag-usapan natin. May plano rin kami mag-host pa ng isang mas malaking event siguro ngayong September. Pero in between then and now, mag-usap tayo sa Facebook at tingnan natin kung ano pa ang ating pwedeng magawa. Maraming salamat at hanggang sa muli nating pagkikita.
Now, I cannot believe this. Okay. Nauna, parang it's baliktad, ano? I don't know, it looks, ayan, walang kukurap. That has a double entendre, meaning, okay. And now next, we are going to hear from 4 panelists. Oh, yeah, these people are less than half my age. Pero ang gagaling nila. Let's hear from, I will introduce them as they come. First, we're going to hear, they're out there first in the field, reporting on what's happening on the ground, monitoring power, telling like it is. Many of them have faced threats, actually. Not only threats, trolls, and other challenges. I'll start with Jeff Canoy. Jeff Canoy is, all of 36 years old, but he has been a reporter and an anchor for ABS-CBN since 2007. He is one of the lead reporters of TV Patrol and has won awards for Best Public Affairs Show Host, Best News Anchor, also for explanatory journalism. Just recently, he received a death threat on Twitter. Jeff and his colleagues, of course, at ABS-CBN have been targets of online threats and harassment. A year ago, the government shut down the ABS-CBN network, but it continues to report. Jeff?
Thank you, Ma'am Winnie. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Jeff Canoy, a Filipino and a journalist for ABS-CBN News, and one of the 11,000 still recovering from the trauma of seeing your organization at the mercy of lawmakers who refuse to stand for press freedom and ultimately for the public and our country. When I was thinking of what to say today, I kept circling back to a line that I often hear in my coverage of disasters and conflict areas, which is, buhay pa kami. Buhay pa kami, that's what people say when they survive. Buhay pa kami, that's what they also say when they are forgotten and in need of help. Buhay pa kami, that's what people say when they continue to endure and persist and strive for the chance to fight and live another day. And a year after the ABS-CBN shutdown, in the middle of a pandemic, it's a message that resonates for many of us. Buhay pa kami. It's been a difficult year. Up to now, it's strange and surreal to see so many empty tables and chairs in our office, knowing that those were previously occupied by your colleagues, friends, mothers, fathers whose dreams were cut short, whose lives were forever altered, and who just wanted to go to work like many of us in this panel. Those that were left behind, like me, Ma'am Jing Reyes, sort of deal with survivor's guilt day in and day out. Why us? Why were we spared? And what does that mean? Journalists like asking questions, but this time around, we're also the ones that need to confront those questions. And I'm reminded of the answers to those questions when I'm out in the field. I remember May of last year after the shutdown when I was sent to Aurora to cover the typhoon, Ambo, and meeting Filipinos who had no access to the news. Not everyone, surprisingly, is on the internet. Not everyone has the capability to be on the internet, which sometimes I think is a good thing because what a peaceful life they probably have without social media. But in times of emergencies, information would come in very handy for them. Some parts of Aurora only receive clear signal from ABS-CBN, but they were deprived of information that might have, saved lives. This also happened in the many typhoons in the fourth quarter of last year in Tuguegarao, in Catanduanes. I've heard it so many times. Hindi namin alam na may paparating na bagyo. Hindi namin alam na ganun kalakas. Malaking kawalan sa kanila yung naging kawalan ng isang source ng impormasyon nila. It's also very frustrating for journalists who remain with the organization. We want to reach more audiences. We want to be of service to more people, but we don't have the same platform that we used to. I thought journalism was for the public, all of public. But with the shutdown, our journalism is now reserved for the privileged, those that have access to cable and the internet. And with the continued attacks on press freedom, our democratic space is clearly getting smaller and smaller each day, and the fight is just getting more difficult. Add to that the continued harassment of journalists online. Some of my colleagues here can attest to the vitriol and the disinformation spread just to discredit us and our ranks and our mission. Nandiyan si Pia Ranyada, si Sir Ed Lingao, lahat yung mga biktima ng fake news. 2 weeks ago, apparently, I died. Nagbabasa lang ako ng social media, tapos nakita ko, RIP Jeff Canoy, 1964 to 2021. So, pinatay na nga ako, pinatanda pa. So, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, buhay pa ako, at kaming mga journalist sa ABS-CBN, buhay pa rin. Tayong mga journalist sa Pilipinas, buhay pa rin. Lumalaban araw-araw sa kanya-kanyang paraan para magampanan yung papel natin sa lipunan. Buhay pa kami, that's what people say when they survive. Pero ngayon, buhay pa tayo, pero hanggang kailan? Lalo pat dadaan tayo sa isang madugong election cycle. Our community is obviously divided on many, many things. Pero we are, again, as mentioned earlier, we are at another crossroads. Ang tanong mananatili ba tayong watak-watak, kanya-kanya, kebs sa kapwa journalist, o magtutulungan ba tayo maninindigan para di lang natin sabihin na buhay pa tayo, but buhay na buhay yung journalism sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat and thank you.
Maraming salamat, Jeff. Tough, huh? It's a tough world, but when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and you're still alive. Our next panelist is Pia Ranyada, who also needs no introduction because of the stories about her being banned from the office of the president in Malacanang. Well, she still covers the office of the president and Bangsamoro regional offices, regional issues for Rappler. She started covering Philippine politics during the 2016 national elections when she tailed the presidential campaign of President Duterte. In 2018, she was banned from entering Malacanang Palace, but she continues to report on President Duterte and the office of the president. Rappler itself is facing several lawsuits because of its reporting. Pia will talk about her difficulties getting to officials and records, the day-to-day challenges of reporting during a pandemic, and what it takes to report on Malacanang, even if you are banned from going there. Ridiculous situation. Pia?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. It's such an honor to be here, especially with this audience. And at this time, it's a very relevant effort that we have to create this pledge. And as Winnie said earlier, I covered the 2016 presidential campaign of the President Duterte, and what a circus it was. I mean, I remember that was the first time I faced trolls on a massive scale. When I think it was because I wrote something about yung short time remarks niya about women in his very first campaign sortie as a candidate. So that was already a foreshadowing of what would happen in his presidency during the rest of his campaign. So siguro, I just have 4 points for everyone today. And something that I picked up also during my time covering Duterte. First is Duterte's antagonism towards critical reportage might rub off on other candidates this time around, especially administration allies. For example, Bongo, who might be running next year, he doesn't include Rappler in any of his Viber groups. He shuts us out all the time. He doesn't reply to our messages. Talagang wala, as in total scene zone siya. And it's also in vogue now to shut out critical journalists. Like, I remember si Rambo Talabang, one of our reporters, when he covered the Revilias, may mga snide remarks pa sa kanya on the side na parang, oh, Rappler nandito, ano ba yan, ganyan. So I think that we as journalists have to find a way to support other journalists when this happens. Those reporters don't have to go it alone. And I think it's important that we do it right then and there. Like, we correct that mindset where politicians can just shoo aside reporters they don't like. I think we have to, as a group, as a sector, as an industry, we have to resist those attempts. Like, kahit just like in field coverage, maybe like correct a politician, sir, wala namang ganyanan. Something like that, something like anything, just so that we show them na hindi na pwedeng ganyanan. I think we also have to realize that reporters, especially in elections, have power too, right? We're not people they can just shut aside and walang consequences. I think that we have to be more confident in wielding that power. Maybe if it takes boycotting a certain campaign sortie because this politician is being insulting to a reporter or baselessly making accusations about media outlet, things like that. I think we have to be more, we have to recognize that we have power too, and we should use this power to fight for our own rights. Second point, field reporters during elections need guidance more than ever because we are faced with candidates who out resource us. They have more resources. They have more allies. They're more united, and they don't play by the rules. So we need our desk editors, newsrooms to provide field reporters who are usually young, diba? Young, like me, I was a first-time political reporter when I covered Duterte. We really need guidance in how to write stories and what, maybe there are some stories that shouldn't be written about, some claims that shouldn't be written about in the first place without it being fact-checked first. So things like that. We need a more solid strategy when we cover politicians, especially this next year. Third point, disinformation will change the coverage landscape. We've seen how Bongbong Marcos in particular, diba, his camp, daming pinapor na resources to fake news and propaganda online. So we need to fight this. We need to find a way as an industry to fight this scourge and maybe learn from best practices from news outlets that do this very well. We can unify so that we can fact check as one. Kasi yung problema is right now, I think only a few reports, only a few outlets actually really fact check politicians. And even if this is a good effort, I think that it can only really mean something, can have impact if everyone does it like as one. When we do it sabay-sabay, with the same kind of line of questioning. It's like in the States, I remember in the Trump and Biden election, diba, yung talagang they were everyone was unified in correcting Trump's speeches. So I think we should be that way. We should not be scared to borrow that from American journalists. Fourth point, we need to make media freedom an election issue. So if this means, diba, asking our candidates, we're all going to be assigned to candidates, diba, Duterte, Sara, whoever. Dapat every chance we get, we ask about what their stand on media freedom is and be very pointed and be very specific about our questions. Like, what will they do about the ABS-CBN shutdown? What will they do about Rappler's cases? What is their stance on banning reporters from beats? So I think we have to be more aggressive. We should wield our power this elections. We have to recognize that elections is a reset, and that means it's also an opportunity for us to show that they need us, right? Because it's true. These candidates, they need every number they can get to win. Because we see the numbers, right? In the surveys, divided pa rin eh. Even if may isang dominant candidate, that candidate can lose if may isang candidate na bumitaw. So they will need us, and we need to use that as an opportunity to take back our rights. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot, Priyan. That's really, maybe we can discuss that in our Facebook page or whatever Facebook group, is it not? And get together to find out what as a profession we will do, united. Before I introduce our next speaker, Florine tells me to remind you, the participants, please, can you use the chat box for any questions you might ask of the panelists or of Sheila or Melinda or Ed? Please use the chat box right now, because mamaya, when you're asked whether your questions, everybody gets frozen for 3 minutes, and I'll have to come in and ask questions before you do. So I hope that does not happen. And also, I am asked to tell you that we are streaming live right now via PCIJ, the Philippine Star, Rappler, CMFR, and the Philippine Press Institute. Pretty good, huh? Okay. Our next speaker is Camille Diola. She who directs content production and innovation at PhilStar Global Corporation, the digital arm of the Star Group of Publications. Talagang she's the youngest person to have led such a team. I don't know, I forget how old Camille is, about 33 ba? Something like that. Anyway, less than half my age. That's pretty easy for anybody to accomplish. Camille is scheduled for vaccination this morning. Kaya her statement will be read by Rosette Adele, the editor of Interaction, a news site under Camille's direction. Camille will tell us, hopefully, about the difficulty of coverage during a pandemic and how, importantly, how to counter fake news, how to deal with disinformation. So Camille via Rosette.
Thank you, ma'am. Good day to all of you, our friends and colleagues in the media. I'm Rosette Adele, editor at Interaction and reporter at philstar.com. So Camille couldn't be here with us today, but I would like to read her statement. For the first time in our careers, we are approaching the national elections with a collective mind. It is expressed in the pledge we're launching today. Next year, the exercise of choosing our next set of leaders is among the most pivotal in our history. It is in the wake of a global pandemic. It also comes after a government whose executive has been accorded with much more power to use and abuse. It is an administration whose brand is crisis from the get-go. It declared the illegal drug scare and consequent war, now with thousands of victims. The so-called destabilization plot and the terrorism threat, both real and imagined. Then came 2020, a crisis, a real crisis of unprecedented scale. Communication is key to managing such a kind, but from its early days, what emerged on top of this health crisis was a communication and leadership catastrophe. There were confusing and conflicting statements, spin, if not downright falsehoods, from some public officials and their social media allies. An alphabet soup of quarantine guidelines, official data and reporting gaps, and verified documents from IATF meetings irresponsibly leaked to chat groups. Recorded and edited pandemic task force meetings aired past our bedtimes. Press conference and chat groups where access of specific journalists is obstructed or their queries are unheeded. Sometimes, reporters get kicked out of these Viber groups for no apparent reason. The news media had to make sense of it all. We had to calm the panic, demystify the science, and point out the uncertain. To do so, we had to adapt to the new environment quicker and earlier than the rest of the population. We set up shop in our homes and became Zoom specialists overnight. And we had to keep asking questions and extending our days. And often, we had to set aside personal and domestic issues that inevitably popped up. Those are not even the worst beats. We witnessed the shutdown of the largest broadcast network and the folding up of community outfits and outlets. We grieve with our colleagues fearing for their jobs. And because our work is something we see as an all-consuming mission, being forcibly removed from it also strips part of our sense of self. It is bewildering. It is painful. We saw the passage of the anti-terrorism bill and subsequent arrests and cases filed under this vicious new law. This and continued harassment online and offline. The threats to individual journalists, newsrooms, their companies are whips past us, made us too tame, too careful. We expect more of this in the coming months. Needless to say, the preceding years, especially the last one, left us very exhausted. Sure, we have settled into, well, actually more on trying to cope with an uneasy rhythm in our coverage, but it doesn't mean we're not floundering and looking for a change, for some relief. So I don't think we can stress enough how crucial these next elections are. A new government has to pick up a pandemic response that's already hopefully winding down. Then it has to seek reparations for countless rights violations and aid our battered and bastardized democratic institutions. That's a tall order for any leader, but we ought to settle for nothing less. For us in the press, there's hardly time and energy left to pick up the pieces. While we hope to develop new skills and new technologies for a post pandemic world, we mainly just have to plow on. We are moving to another period of intense news coverage while in the state of disrepair that the past years have left us. The task ahead is an enormous one, as described on the election pledge. It's honestly really overwhelming when it's itemized that way, but it's a great starting point and reference. It calls for a refinement in newsroom practices and cultures, habitual fact checking and BS calling, flexibility, nimbleness, and openness to corrections and criticism. What I'm most excited about is this: it inspires the raising of standards over complacency and acquiescence, and it upholds a sense of community over competition. So whether our collective vow will make little or make large and lasting difference is completely up to each one of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosette, and thank you, Camille. That was an excellent description of what we are going through now. Before I introduce our next panelist, I have some. I'm asked to mention, ano pa ba? Nakalimutan ko. Anyway, I'm sorry. Ayun. Wala po muna, sabi ni Florin. Okay. Our next panelist is Carol Arguillas, who is editor of Minda News. The news service arm of the Mindanao Institute of Journalism, which she co-founded. I tell you, the women in journalism talaga nakakatakot. She founded this Minda News, Mindanao Institute of Journalism in 2011. She has been extensively covering the conflict and peace processes in Mindanao for the past 30 years. So please don't try to guess her age. Mindanao is President Duterte's turf. And even before the elections, it's already the battleground of competing political ambitions. So Carol will tell us, hopefully, about the challenges faced by reporters in Mindanao. Carol?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you po, Ma'am Winnie. Parang out of place ako dito sa panel. Para ako lang yung matanda. Anyway, I apologize lang. I might have to turn off the video so that I will not freeze. Medyo unstable yung connection. So,
oh boy.
But I will try. Okay. Maayong buntag sa atong tanan gikan dinhi sa Mindanao. 348 days. In 348 days, that's June 30, 2022, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, the country's 16th president and first Mindanaoan to lead the nation, will step down after 6 years in office, and his successor, whoever he or she may be, will be sworn in as the 17th president. In 296 days, on May 9, 2022, voters will elect the country's 17th president, vice president, senators, representatives, party list groups, local government officials, and regional election of 80 members of parliament in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao if Congress does not pass the bills seeking extension of the transition period until 2025 and the issues related to the conduct of this parliamentary election within a presidential system shall have been resolved. Filipinos of voting age but have not registered have only 75 days left until September 30 the last day for voters registration. And in 76 days, October 1, 2021, the filing of certificates of candidacy will begin. The week-long filing will end on October 8th, and we will know by then who will be running for elective posts. Given what happened in 2016, we should also look at possible last-minute substitutions. The May 2022 election will likely have the most number of Mindanaoans eyeing national seats, and three names have so far been mentioned for president. Presidential daughter Sara Duterte, boxing icon and Senator Manny Pacquiao, and special to the assistant to the president and Senator Bongo. Several others are also hoping they could land a seat in the Senate. The Mindanao vote, 14.4 million, that's about 23% of the national, was a crucial factor in the victory of senatorial candidates in 2019. Will it be the same in 2022? Or will majority of the voters this time elect from a wide range of choices their president, vice president, and senators? The challenges in covering the May 2022 elections in Mindanao are many, and covering it in the midst of a pandemic where majority of the 26.2 million Mindanaoans as of the latest census have yet to receive their first dose of the vaccines against COVID-19 is just one factor. When the pandemic struck and community quarantine started in mid-March last year, several community newspapers have had to stop operations. Some have resumed but have downsized operations, retrenched personnel, reduced the frequencies of their circulation from 7 days a week pre-pandemic to 6 days a week during the pandemic and until now. Some even down to 3 times a week. Survival is a major concern among the community media in Mindanao, and I suppose it's true for the rest of the community media across the country. 1 or 2 community radio stations stopped operations, and several hundreds of workers in the regional stations of ABS-CBN in Mindanao lost their jobs not because of COVID-19, but because of the national tragedy brought about by the non-renewal of the network's franchise. The Mindanao stations of ABS-CBN had such a wide reach across Mindanao's 27 provinces and 33 cities. By that act of Congress, millions of Mindanaoans lost their free access to television news and entertainment right smack in a pandemic when people need to know what is happening and forced to stay home because of quarantine measures could no longer watch Ricardo Dalisay in Ang Provinciano and other entertainment shows. The network could also have provided millions of Mindanaoan children access via free TV to network-produced educational materials. The ABS-CBN stations in Mindanao had the widest reach, and because it had enough resources, could easily be deployed to cover areas other journalists will not be able to cover. Where are the journalists and media workers who lost their jobs? Some used their separation pay to set up a business. Some joined government. Some have joined or are being enticed to be part of the campaign machinery of candidates. But there are many who want to continue to be journalists but cannot provide for their families on measly correspondence fees from the national media. The national media might want to re-examine how they pay their correspondents and how frequent they send the payments, or hire them as regular reporters. But those in the media community in Mindanao who have survived the first 15 months of the pandemic quarantines are trying their best to cope with the times and to remain true to their profession. Local papers with reduced frequencies who had no online publications before are now going online. The Philippine Press Institute has held several online sessions related to media issues. 48 na yata since the pandemic. Tama ba, Ariel? It might be best to have special sessions and not just for 2 hours, but a series of sessions on how to help improve online presence and generate revenues. There are many best practices in online publishing that others may want to share with their colleagues in the provinces without necessarily exposing their trade secrets. Marami pa po kaming problema as journalists dito sa Mindanao. May mga nare-red tag, may mga ayaw po ng medyang makulit na nagtatanong ng mga dapat itanong. And yes, Pia, may mga ini-exclude din from chat groups. Reporting on the May 2022 elections should not only focus on the run-up to election day, but on the issues that the candidates espouse in whatever office they are aspiring for. Mindanaoan candidates who will run for national posts should be asked on their stand on the war on drugs, the West Philippine Sea, the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, human rights, press freedom, the Bangsamoro peace processes, the peace process with the National Democratic Front, the anti-terror law, mining, the rehabilitation of Marawi, and compensation for its displaced residents, among others. Candidates for local posts should be asked similar questions too. And if we can go back to their election promises in 2016 for national posts or 2019 for local posts, did they fulfill these promises at all? For the local officials, how did they spend taxpayers' money? For example, how did they spend the Bayanihan grant to cities and municipalities, which was equivalent to 1 month's internal revenue allotment, and the Bayanihan grant to provinces, which was equivalent to half a month's share of the IRA? We in Mindanao believe in the importance of mapping political dynasties, and we have done this for Mindanao cities and provinces from 1987 to 2019, and will soon release the 1987 to 2022 list. It is important for the voters to know who they have elected in the past 35 years. We hope to have a listing of the years before 1986. It's basically all in the family. And in the 1987 Constitution's provision banning political dynasties has remained simply a provision. No law has been passed by the dynasty-dominated Congress in the past 35 years. Given that the May 2022 elections will be different from previous elections, we still need to know the final details on how it will be conducted. There are many other challenges that come to mind. How do we monitor vote buying this time? This is no longer about money exchanging hands. Ma-COVID pa, di ba? But through other formats, cash via online, in the form of ayuda. How do we ensure that vaccination of the residents will not be in aid of election? Vigilance of the reporters is needed, and so is vigilance of the public. Covering the elections is not just about the run-up to May 9, 2022, Election Day, and the swearing-in of officials noon of June 30, 2022. What lies beyond June 30, 2022? Today is July 16, 2021. A year from now, we will have a new president, 16 days in office. Marami pa po tayong dapat gawin as journalists. Hindi lang po ito para sa Mindanao, but para sa buong Pilipinas. The challenges po, ang gusto lang namin sabihin from Mindanao, padayon. And yes, wag kukurap. Maraming salamat po.
Winnie, you are muted.
I said thank you very much, Carol. What you said is both inspiring and depressing. I hope we are not overwhelmed, but that isn't exactly what this launch is all about, is how we can get together, how we can get, watch each other's backs, etc. Sheila, Melinda, I hope you're listening. We've got to get this Facebook group together and we've got to start planning like mad. We cannot wait till September to do anything extraordinary. What we're going to be doing now is all in the category extraordinary. No more shall the Center of Media Freedom and Responsibility call the election news coverage, not relevant. We are going to be very relevant in this next election. And now we have, the last, but certainly not the least speaker in our panel. And we've heard from Mindanao, we've heard from Luzon, and now we're going to hear from the Visayas. And we are talking about Francis Alan Angelo, who has been editor-in-chief of the Daily Guardian in Iloilo since 2013. The Daily Guardian is an independent, note the word independent, newspaper that has bureaus in Calibo, Boracay, Rojas, Bacolod, Antique, Guimaras, and Manila. We don't often hear about the Western Visayas in Manila, and we are fortunate to have Francis talk to us about what it's like to maintain your independence during a very polarized time. Francis?
Good morning, Miss Winnie. Good morning sa mga kasama natin sa trabaho. Ma'am Belinda, si Ma'am Sheila, and our friends from PCIJ and PTI, and our colleagues across the country. Magandang umaga, mayong aga. Halin din sa City. But experiential thing po. The past 3 days has been very volatile and very exciting and confusing on the part of Ilonggos, particularly our community quarantine status. Para kaming Miss Universe, para PIA Awards back. Ang term namin na PIA Awards back kami. We thought an ECQ, and yesterday suddenly we became ECQ. So talagang restrictive ang policies ngayon dito. All because of mixed signals and sudden changes of pronouncements and statements from the national government. Now, in the middle of the pandemic where information is very critical, particularly on how we are doing in terms of curbing the infections and what are we supposed to do as a community. Kung confusing na ngayon sa ganyang bagay, we can only imagine what will happen during elections. Number one, we have less access to candidates. We can only do so online. And sometimes, as mentioned by our previous speakers before, they control the channels, they control access to group chats, to virtual press conferences. So, sa mga makukulit na media o journalists, medyo disadvantage yun because candidates will have the control of the conversation by way of control of access. Lalo na ngayon dito sa amin sa local, mahihirapan kami. Kahapon nga, we were trying to get access to cabinet officials who mattered, who could explain why the sudden change in our community quarantine. And medyo matagal. That's why confusing yung naging flow ng information. Even the people were asking, kailan tayo mag-ECQ? Ngayon na ba or next week pa? Because the statements from Malacanang and the ILG even was very confusing. Ang syntax kumbaga hindi clear eh. Kailan kami mag-ECQ? July 16 ba until 31? Or July 22 until July 31? So, sa ganun pa lang, sa pandemic pa lang na flow ng information, mahirap na magkaintindihan. Paano pa kaya sa election? So yun ang concern, isang challenge na nakikita ko come election time na, iba pa rin yung nakikipag-interact ka sa candidate face-to-face. Eh. And sometimes you get to ask questions that you really want beyond what is fed to you through public press releases, or even yung sabi natin advertorials of paid news. Isang bit ko na lang na one LGU even approached us for a advertorial against a potential rival in the next election. So we told them, okay, since you will be paying for space, but you will not be encroaching in our editorial decisions and independence on this matter. So we will look at your materials, and if you find it unsavory and has may legal gray areas, then it's a no-go, no deal. Yun ang isa sa mga challenge dito po sa local na rin because imagine a lot of our colleagues, our fellow news organizations shut down and many of our colleagues are out of the job or if they do, parang freelance by article ang bayad sa kanila. Which is a very precarious or dangerous situation for most journalists because, I know some of them have a very high ethical standards, but if choosing between keeping your body and soul together is a hard thing. So, pag gutom ka, minsan, bebenta mo muna yung kaluluwa mo para makasurvive. And sa local press, As I have observed since 2002 that I joined this industry, ganyan lagi ang kalakaran dito. We must admit it na ganyan talaga na some of our colleagues given to political pressure or even pecuniary interest. Kasi nga, we have to survive. And another thing is in this world of interconnectivity, online lang lahat. It's easy to post information. It's even easy to fake. Kahit yung aming mga graphics card, yung mga materials namin for the Daily Guardian. We've experienced that before that we got fake. Parang pinalabas na ganito na we release a news on this thing. Statement from politicians. When in fact, it was a fake post. So, mahirap. And sometimes it's unnerving and nakakawang gana minsan sa trabaho, but we just have to push on, especially lalo na sa local kasi ang election naman hindi lang naman sa Luzon, sa Metro Manila, but even in the local scene, it's crucial na malaman din namin ang gustong platforms ng mga national candidates on certain issues. For example, freedom, post-pandemic plans nila, and everything. So, yun po nakita namin challenge, and kahit sa mga black timers sa radio, it's also another challenge because mas viral, minsan dun nangagaling sa mga black time radio programs yung mga viral posts sa social network, particularly in politics, lalo ng mga chismis or away-away ni politician A versus politician B, which veers away from crucial issues on economy, environment, human rights, etc. So, parang minsan talagang sabong at circus yung ating eleksyon, lalo na sa local, dun mas makulay sa local acting po. So, it's a big challenge for us, local journalists, and how to parse through these very circus-like events and focus on the issues that matter, especially during elections, to educate our voters. I think that's all po ang observations. And hopefully, this group could help, they could help local journalists naman hone our job as reporters, as purveyors of information. Salamat po, magmaayong aga sa tanong.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Francis. So we've heard from Mindanao, we've heard from Visayas, we've heard from Luzon, all over the Philippines. And as I see it, these panelists have really told us that there are three main problems. The problem of communications has been constrained tremendously by both man-made and nature-made factors, the pandemic and the closure of the largest TV network, ABS-CBN. And then there's also the lack of solidarity that we journalists have demonstrated. We have not really, we've not really had each other's backs. And that if we're to improve, if we're to even gain strength, we need to watch each other's backs. The people just sit aside and be very quiet about things that are happening to other networks, other newspapers, etc. It seems as if they're more concerned about the loss of competition. They're very glad about the loss of competition than they are about what is happening to the country. And the third problem that I find that has been talked about is the increasing prudence. This is a nice word. The prudence of media. They are very timorous, and I think that is something that can be cured by our uniting together and standing by each other. So this is the discussion time, folks. If you have any questions, you can ask questions of, as I said, Melinda, Sheila, Ed, and all our panelists. You can put your questions in chat, or you can ask, I think, can you ask the questions just live? Florine?
Yes, po, we can do that.
Okay. Any questions, Florine? No questions na?
Oh, no. What we have so far is from Miss Ceres.
Okay, no, well, if sabi ko na nga ba nag-iintay ako ng question, I'll have to ask the first question. Well, I'll ask the first question. Kakainis. Carol, I really want to know. You talked about 26 million Mindanao, and you talked about 14 million voting in Mindanao, the 14 million votes. 26 million people in Mindanao and 14 million are voters? Ganun ba yan? Did I hear you right, Carol?
2019 voter
6.2 million.
14 million is based on the 2019 voters list.
And what is
at that time the population was still 24 something million. Because the population I cited earlier is the latest as of May 1, 2020.
And now the more important question, what do the Mindanaoans think of President Duterte's administration? Do you have an idea on the ground?
Many will, of course, say that it's the best thing that has happened to Mindanao, but there are others also who say, let's not just talk about Mindanao, but let's talk about the entire Philippines. So it's not as if, para kasing nangyayari din, parang, I think this is how the Ilocanos probably felt during the time of Marcos. Because you come from Ilocos, then you're pro-Marcos. Parang ngayon ang nangyayari, everyone thinks that because you're from Davao or you're from Mindanao, supporters yan ni na presidente. Hindi naman po lahat ng mga Mindanaons ay nag-a-agree po sa mga ibang polisiya ni presidente.
Okay.
Hindi po dapat lahatin. Kasi marami pong nagreklamo nung panahon niya as mayor at marami rin pong nagrereklamo sa panahon niya as president na from Mindanao din.
Pero ano yung, give us an idea of the proportions of those who think that he's a lousy president, or those who think that he's.
If you look at the survey results po from 2016, from 2016, in the other parts of the country, the president's popularity may have waned a bit, but consistently Mindanao has been giving him the high marks, so that also improves his ratings precisely because of that Mindanao portion of the survey. So, we have to remember also that he is the first Mindanaoan president, and of course the shift in party politics, no? Everyone joined the president's party after 2016. And if you wanted support for the 2019 elections, then you cannot. At the time, he was still very popular, and it was difficult to go against Duterte. So there's this tendency to think for some that ato mani, I mean, he is ours, taga Mindanao siya, etc. So yung pananaw na ganon, hindi lang naman dapat para sa Mindanao yung presidente, but dapat para sa buong bansa. Yun po yung sinasabi namin. Na dapat hindi ganon. Parang hindi mo bobotohin ang isang tao dahil taga Iloilo siya or kasi Ilonggo siya. Pero ganun po nangyayari, di ba?
Well, that's
senators, for example, malaking boto nila sa mga Ilonggo-speaking areas, so they get voted. So parang ang nangyari ngayon, kasi first time nga na merong presidente na taga Mindanao, marami ding projects na nakuha yung mga local officials. So for them to be able to support the party in power.
So that's behavior we hope.
Practical politics.
Okay. And now we have a question from DJ. How do the owners of media enterprises view this movement, meaning Election Pledge 22? Did you get to talk to any of the media owners who are maybe politically connected in one way or another? This is addressed to, I guess, Melinda or Sheila. This is your husband's question. Melinda, please talk.
Okay. We always feel that every time there is any kind of movement or collective decision, that the owners do have a say about the response of the individual journalists that we work with. That has been clear in the experience since the founding of CMFR, which is more than 30 years ago. That people, of course, need to find out how the wind blows at the top and where and how their own vested business interests will be affected by anything that their individual members will do. So that is a question that goes to the heart of how far we can move forward in the spirit of this pledge. Because as we know, these are jobs that those who are part of the process, the people who have been part of the process, the people who have signed on, etc., may at one point or another simply be cut off by the owner's will. We have never been able to draw together a community that will look at the role of ownership of media in the light of the responsibility that media organizations hold. And therefore, I think part of what needs to be done is to reach out to the different communities with which the owners interact. Should they have a problem with this pledge, then let's get the discussion out there so that they can hear what the people are really saying. Should this pledge go out and get the support of the public in general, or even of the institutional communities that we hope to be able to reach? What or how will the owners respond? Right now, we have a good show in terms of individual journalists saying, we want to be part of this. And how far we move forward with it, I think, hopefully, no owner will stand in the way of that.
Well, DJ says he thinks it's not you, it's the journalists working in these enterprises should address the question. Any journalists working in the enterprises you think are... anybody want to address this question, please?
Well, let me just say that the Philippine...
The elephant in the room.
Yeah, let me just say, Winnie, that the Philippine Press Institute is a signatory to this agreement, to this pledge, and it is the representative of newspaper publishers all around the country. Ariel is here. Ariel, do you want to talk about PPI? Also, PPI recently issued very, very good guidelines on election coverage, right, Ariel?
Yeah. Oh, what a way to
Ariel is the director of the Philippine Press Institute. Go ahead.
Hello,
Ariel.
magandang maaga po sa inyo lahat. Gulat ako kay Sheila. Na I just shared with her kasi yung the revised and expanded code of ethics with the AIJC. Series of AIJC is here alongside other members of the Philippine Press Institute. Difficult question. I cannot speak for the owners of of the newspapers which are members of the institute. Pero I like what Ms. Melinda said about owners do not have to get in the way. Every time there are coalitions like this one, positions on media freedom, harassment, etc. Sa experience ko as executive director, wala pa naman po nangyaring ang tawag nito, they're blocking them off, etc. Never pa naman. I'm so happy to tell you that kasi otherwise hindi kami magjo-join dito. We will not sign up, di ba? Ang magiging problema lang siguro pag ando na mismo sa elections coverage kasi hindi na namin monitor yon, while the expanded code or the expanded code, revised code of ethics in reporting elections will be there to guide them. Whatever happens on the ground, nasa kanilang. But nandun sa Code of Ethics, di ba, Ma'am Juliet, Therese, and the other members of the Institute who are here, ang sinabi natin, an utmost consideration dapat in the code, which is intrinsically provided, ay dapat pangalagaan yung kapanganan at yung kalusugan at saka yung seguridad ng mga journalists na ide-deploy sa mga areas, especially in conflict situations or hotspots. Yun ang lumabas sa consultation namin dun sa mga members and other consultations na gagawin ng AIJC nila series with other sectors. So hopefully, sa panahong ito, in the wake of a raging pandemic, mas kailangan yung tulong, yung atensyon ng mga media owners, yung publishers. Okay, I'm not just talking about members of the Philippine Press Institute. What we've always been saying, kailangan we need to join other newspapers na hindi miyembro ng PPI. Kasi we've got PAPI. I cannot speak for PAPI, the Publish Association of the Philippines, pero meron silang sariling activity. How I wish they're here. Pero hindi ko alam kung paano natin sila mahawaan, in that sense, lack for better term. Pero I think they need to join the fray. When I say fray, it's a meaningful fray. I think it's going to be a good bandwagon for all of us. So, yun.
So, Ariel, you're telling us that the Philippine Press Institute cannot talk for the owners of the
normally, Tita Winnie, ang nagre-represent po sa Philippine Press Institute ay yung madalas yung editors. Saka meron ding mga publishers and owners, family owners. At the same time, sila din yung nagpapatakbo. Siyempre, minsan sila pa yung publisher, sila yung editor, sila yung writer. Di ba? Sila na lahat. Di ba? Yung mga ganun. So, I've been telling sila Florin, sila Ma'am Melinda, and yung JP, pa nag-uumpukan kami. The reason why, I don't know if you noticed this, the reason why madali kaming, kunyari pag sinabi nila Ma'am Melinda, okay, PPI, ipalabas nyo ang position nito, ganito. I don't know, madali. Kinikalabutan lang ako, sorry ha. Madali siya because nothing gets in the way. Nobody tells me, nobody stops me from saying, Ariel, do not ever issue that position. Do not share it. Nobody tells me. And hopefully, I thank God na hindi yan nangyari. Sana wag mangyari. Kasi mas kailangan natin a unified media industry na kasama yung PPI and yung JP. Lahat tayo andun. Sana, Tita Winnie, I'm hoping merong magandang mangyari sa pledge na ito. Kasi kailangan talaga merong magandang mangyari, Tita Winnie.
Aba.
Yeah.
Huwag kang mag-alala. We're gonna make this work or die in the
Yeah, we should make this work. We should make this work, Tita Winnie. It's even a tough order for members of the Philippine Press Institute. I know a lot of them are watching outside of this meeting room because this live feed is shown this page and group ng PPI. So they're listening right now, and I beg of you to really take heed of the pledge.
Well, let's field the question to Francis Angelo. You say that you are editor-in-chief of an independent newspaper. How do you know that newspaper is independent? Who owns the newspaper? Whatever is it? Owned by the public? What is it?
We've been around for. Yes, ma'am.
The owners do not get involved with you.
Owners are
They're not politically connected. The owners of the Daily Guardian.
Yeah, we've been around since 2000, 2000, under a different name then. But they usually change the name, the paper's name, more of a branding. Disclosure, our owners have political connections, but you will seldom see lumalabas yung pangalan o balita about sa mga friends nila. And they just leave it to us. The family actually is heavily involved in operations, and the kids are there, and the kids are very independent-minded, and sometimes give some of the decisions to them. And from what I know, I've been around since 2002, the Guardian. I never felt pressured by the owners to do this and that. They just leave it to my judgment. Okay, Francis, we have this, look over this, investigate, whatever, it's up to you.
So never has it occurred that they have tried to influence what the newspaper says about anything, your editorials, etc. None?
Yeah.
Never? So you have tried to...
There were times that they gave us advice on particular issues or angles.
And how closely do you follow this advice?
Well, I just told them, okay, I'll go over this, and they find it meritorious, and we can like balance things.
So in other words, you have disregarded their advice at times without any impact on your career.
Well, I think the word is not really disregard, but I just find alternatives. Okay, so I'll do this, but
okay.
I think I have to do this also.
We just wanted to know because you're the only one that says independent. Okay, now here's a question for Carol, which is, I think, a fantastic question. How will the media, particularly national media, deal with sponsored content? Nako, sarap nito. We have been seeing what looks like news reports, but are actually paid content. Isn't that correct? We have been seeing this.
Yeah.
All right. Any one who wants to deal with that? Obviously not Carolyn, not Carol. What about Pia? Or Sheila or Ed? Ed, naku, ikaw hindi ka pa nagsasalita. Okay.
Sponsored content. Well, okay. I'll take it from the point of view of broadcast. Matagal na problema yan.
It's so obvious. It is so obvious.
Matagal na pong problema.
And yet, nobody does anything about it. What do you think we can do about it?
Of course, we can. Of course, I can't talk for the owners or management. I'm not even in management. Sa akin, it's more of pushback. The more you indicate to your bosses na parang alanganin yan, the more they tend to get the idea that there really is something wrong with these concepts. For example, yung AOB, yung anchor on board, yung mga ganon. These are yung for example nasa radyo. In the middle of a news story about politics, bigla mag-spill yung anchor na at yan dahil kung bakit kailangan natin ng medical dahil ang medical yung isa-segue sa ganon. I mean it's unfortunately accepted in a lot of stations as a way of getting revenues legitimately in quotes legitimately. So systemically, it's really a problem that has not been addressed yet. We've talked about it a lot in a lot of the fora ng mga media organizations. We haven't come up with a solution to it yet, except the need to push back little by little from the bottom going up. Kasi it's a revenue stream for some media organizations. Ma'am, if I may just add, I think big part of the problem din kasi is in the last decade or so, more and more nagbe-blur ang lines between news and opinion.
That's how we're deteriorating.
So while it blurs, while nagbe-blur yung line between news and opinion, nagbe-blur din ang lines among news, opinion, and advertising.
So
it's in that direction.
So let me get this straight, Ed, please. You think we should push back?
We really need to push back.
Ganun ba yun? We should
really need to push back. I mean, if I think that if your producer or if your producer tells you do this, it's up to you to say I'm not gonna do that, or not in my program.
Okay. What
But
about
that's up to you. I mean, it's an individual decision.
what about in print media? What do you suggest they do?
Ask the print people.
Print media. Anybody from print media? How do you push back when you are asked by your editors or whatever to sort of slant the report to a certain way, which you don't like?
Maybe we should ask Juliet from the Inquirer, Juliet Lavo Cabellana.
Juliet.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So, well, sponsored content must really be properly labeled. Kasi just to separate it from news and from advertising. And I agree with Ed. It's a revenue stream for media, especially at this very difficult time when the print industry globally is very challenged. So they also need to survive. But fortunately, we've not had very much problem with distinguishing that. And I hope that it will be consciously, it will be in the consciousness of many editors, especially during the elections. If I may just add on the issue of the ownership, the owners and how they feel about this pledge. I believe naman that many owners, media owners, think that good journalism is good business. So parang they have a big stake in the credibility of their media organization as much as the editors. So I strongly believe that media owners will not stand in the way of this pledge, as Ma'am Winnie appropriately said. So thank you. And congratulations and more of this.
But the Inquirer has been the subject of boycotts, etc., precisely because of this.
Yes.
So you recommend to the other newspapers that they too should be able to survive this kind of treatment.
Yes, thank you, Ma'am Winnie. So during the Estrada administration, our owners stood by us. So even if it meant very big loss in revenue because many advertisers pulled out, but our owners stood by the editors and the editors fought back. So
in this administration?
Estrada administration. So
this administration.
This administration. Well, we were the first to be subject to the president's hire. But so Winnie, I said we were among the first to be targeted during this administration. The target is more the owners because they know how to go to the pockets, right? So the owner
does that not have a chilling effect on other owners of other media?
Well, of course, you're also afraid because you don't. You feel that if you really are very this is a different kind of president. So parang your question is, okay, we are brave and courageous because that is in our DNA. But what if we're closed tomorrow? So there's really that climate of fear. But what we did is we just went on with what we do best, which is just to go on with our continuing with our reports. And you take punches, but you're able to do your part, your mission.
The important thing is you're still standing.
Yes, we're still standing. Okay. And thanks to our readers
that's
the
lesson. You're still, hindi pa kayo namamatay.
Buhay pa din, according to Jeff. Buhay pa din yung Inquirer, Rappler.
I think for the last question, maybe the last question.
Winnie, I think Robbie Alampay wants to say something. Can we ask him?
Sige, Robbie,
go ahead.
No, I just want to it's just an insight. Just like everybody else, I can't speak for owners, but I can speak for my personal experience, starting from when I was a reporter until I was editor and so on. First, I do want to say, and this is on behalf of not just for us, but even for the public. One, it's a real issue. We've always known that media ownership, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world, media ownership, especially in when business has been disrupted and you have interrelated business interests. Media ownership has always been an Achilles heel for media, and it's just a matter of fact. We have to make money, we have to survive, and so on, and that really complicates matters. ABS-CBN, of course, was the most glaring example of that. Now, despite that, just like everybody who's spoken, I cannot remember any time when an owner or the board or anyone ever told me as a reporter or as editor or as editor. Well, I really cannot remember any time. Anybody, sorry, may nakikip ko. I cannot remember any time when somebody told me how to cover an election-related issue, and so on. So there's that. Secondly, I think when institutions speak, particularly around election time, that when institutions do speak at the launch of their election campaign, at the election coverage campaigns, that they are speaking for owners. And at the very least, there's that. You will hear the different networks and the different newspapers and different media companies in the coming months launching their election campaigns, and their pledges will be there. Free and fair elections, we stand for that. We stand for transparency and so on. Even without hearing it, I know we will hear. I know we will hear that. No? So there's that.
Okay,
I think what's important to remember is that our initiative today is really about us individuals. You know, we it's enough. I think not enough, but I think we already recognize the particular dilemma and realities of media owners at that level. Unfortunately, that's not the kind of thing that we can solve right now. It's an ongoing conversation. It's been going on for decades, if not centuries. But the important thing, and that's what I wanted to say, is that our statement today speaks for us as individuals. It speaks to what Ed mentioned of, we have the ability to push back, even with owners. We have the ability to push back even against sponsored content. If sponsored content comes out, then that's fair game, even among members of the organization where that sponsored came up, right? And as individuals, we can speak out. We have our own platforms. We have social media. And most importantly, I think what we're saying here is we have each other to amplify those pushbacks that need to happen. And from my experience, ownership in the complicated corporate structures, we all know, in all fairness, the realities that they have to contend with, the thousands of jobs that they have to keep in mind. We will keep that in mind. We will not, I think the higher you go, the less judgmental and the more understanding or commiserating you can be. But as individuals, we are reclaiming that power for all of us to amplify for each other. And for that matter, to amplify for, I imagine, a lot of voices that are more silent than they wish they were. And that's what I'll say. I'll just emphasize our statement today is for us individuals. It's for each of us to say that, we will not change the entire reality for our profession and our industry with this one statement. But this will reassert certain values for ourselves in the meantime, and that's going to make a big difference already.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to the content of this issue? So what Robbie is saying is we got to do it as individuals, right? What about the media organizations that have joined the election pledge? Ano yun? Hindi sila kasali? Tayo lang mga us 311 members of the endangered species? Is that what you're saying, Robbie?
No, no. Of course, I'm very happy for the organizations that have signed up. I've signed up my own organization. It's a small organization. But what I'm saying is, everybody welcome. But the real power lies with the individuals. I think that's my reflection on it. I mean,
the analysis is
here. I think that the power is with us, just like in elections. Though, the power is with the people, and there are so many things you cannot change in our society overnight. We all know that, but I think every election is a time to say that the power is with you as one person with one voter, with one vote. And it's the same thing with this statement. We wish there were more institutional sign-ups. That would be great. Each and every one we welcome, and that adds to it. But the reality, for me, my reflection is the power is the real power here is in the individuals.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Now we have another question which also touches very, very deeply what's going to be happening in the coming elections. This is from Ray Gaspay, and he says definitely trolls will be widely used in election campaigns for 2022. What should be our best antidote? Nako. Who wants to answer that question? Nobody feels confident?
I think we should call on those who have been trolled mercilessly, like the people in Rappler and ABS-CBN, maybe Ging and then Pia.
O yan.
Hi. Hi, Ma'am Winnie.
Hi.
So good to be part of this. I would also just like to say that I signed up as both as an individual and as an organization because I feel it is the right thing to do, and I believe that our pledge is reflective of our own code of conduct during election coverage that we issued many years ago, as well as the spirit of our code of ethics that is the embodiment of everything we stand for as journalists. Now, about the trolls and the bashing that we need to prepare for as we cover the elections and the campaign, I think we just really have to fight as an organization. We have to be smart and strategize about the kind of response that we are to give to these bashers and trolls and this obviously well-orchestrated and well-organized army. Mahirap po magsabi ng isang solusyon lang, no, o isang paraan ng paglaban dito. But in our organization, it has always been our policy to speak up and issue statement, defend ourselves when our integrity is being questioned publicly, either through social media or by any other public means. So, but there is also that other side of it where you don't want to legitimize a claim or an allegation that is really just malicious and has no basis. So, case-to-case basis ang ginagawa namin dito. And I think I see that some of our fellow journalists, our other media organizations also take this approach, no? But as a group, we already said in our pledge that we would fight any form of disinformation through fact-checking, through challenging statements that are made without basis, as well as by having each other's backs when our members are harassed or accused falsely and become the subject of other malicious practices. So I think if we work together and we fight this in a smart way, mahirap po, no? Kasi kami in the 2016 experience, right when we were doing the town hall debate in April of 2016, that was the first time we really had a taste of what was to come. Talagang grabe ang naging bashing noon, and only because our debate moderators asked the tough questions of certain candidates. And I believe that we are in for more of this because they have even, I think they perfected this this art or this science. They've known how to game the system. They've known how to use the algorithms. We really have to study this more closely and strategize, I think.
Yeah, but it seems the running theme always is have each other's backs, stand together, and push back together, because pushing back one lonely person is not a very comfortable comfortable situation. And I think this election 22 and the activities the hosts are planning for the coming months are going to help in uniting us and making us stronger. And I think that's almost the end of our discussion. It is in fact the end of the discussion. This is the end to our program. So if you haven't signed the pledge yet, please do so. It's been explained, it's been examined, etc. And we are posting the link in the chat. Naka-post na ba, Florine?
It's there po.
Okay. And sandali lang, please post, please attendees, post your profile photos with the logo. It's very comforting, walang kukurap. And, it boosts up our backbone. Walang kukurap. Both meanings intended. And so we are now, before we start singing the song, kailangan, please, you have to stay together with your walang kukurap in the background, and ano sinabi? Or to stay for the photos, because we are going to be photographed in the gallery. So please look at the camera or whatever and put on your best smiles and walang kukurap. We are closing with a song from hip hop artist Balakid. It's called, would you believe, My Pag-asa. Message very simple. There's hope if we work together and with and for the people. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Till next time, huwag kayong aalis dyan hanggang hindi kayo na photograph. Can we have the song, May Pag-asa?
Madalas ka bang nag-aalangan kung maanong buhay ay makakamtan, kung magandang bukas ay madaratan, kung makatarunang kaunlaran ay mararanasan pa ng mga tulad mo, karaniwang tao, mga kayod kabayo, wala mang trabaho, mga tila pinagkaita ng pagbabago. Kamo, ginawa't ginagawa nyo ang lahat, butot balat banat, di pa rin makasapat. Paano aangat? Ultimo pangkain ay salat, wala nang mapasukan, hahamakin pang tamad. Pwes dapat maunawaan mo, hindi lang ikaw ang nagkakaganto. Krisis sa buong bayan nakadagan, kayang wakasan, basta't laging tandaan. Sa bawat isa sa atin, pero may mga problema, panlipunan, pasapasa Magsikap man hanggat pareho lang ang sistema. Pag-angat ay kulang-kulang, makabiran lang na magtulungan upang mga hakbang ay gumaan. Nasa pagkakaisa ating kapangyarihan, kabayanihan ating pagbabayanihan. Kaya't tandaan ang kapalaran mo, nakaugnay sa mga kababayan mo. Krisis sa buong bayan nakadagan, kayang wakasan basta't laging tandaan. Makabuluhang pagbabagong aanhin basta't sama-sama. May 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 makabuluhang pagbabagong aanhin basta't sama-sama.
Okay, I think we got photographed already. That's the end of the program. We'll see each other in the Facebook book or whatever it's called. I'm not a member of Facebook, so I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'll try to get there. We've got each other's backs. I hope we've got each other's backs, and we are going to push back. We are not going to be an endangered species anymore.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Bye, Sheila.
Thank you, thank you.
See you all on Facebook.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, everybody. Ingat-ingat.
Thank you, Winnie. Thanks,
Ingat
Winnie.
kayo.
See you on Facebook.
Kita-kita ulit.
Thank you. Ingat.
Bye.